Hey everyone, this is quite an interesting and very special video. I am here with Mr. W.M. Martin. He has agreed to do a little bit of an interview with me, so I'll be asking him just a few questions. These are not like terribly professional questions, mostly from a fan to an author. Thank you for being here, Mr. Martin.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so I'm going to be asking, I'm going to start off with some questions just about, I guess, some of the things that you've written into these books. So, how did this whole universe start, so to speak? What was the beginning of it?
Ever since my daughters were little, I would tell them bedtime stories every night, and I would just make up stories off the cuff and just try to have fun with bedtime stories, maybe riffing on familiar fairy tales or bedtime stories, and I don't know, just adding a different twist to it to kind of make it a little bit more exciting. And when they got old enough to kind of help me with it, they would add their own little pieces of the story at bedtime. So instead of me dictating a story to them, it became an adventure for us at bedtime. We would all kind of tell these series of tales together, and our stories and our imaginations would grow with them.
And how long ago did it start happening when you started to, I guess, put pen to paper?
In earnest, probably about 3.5, 4 years ago, maybe.
So that was the beginning. Was there even like the ideas of like Arceus and Maggie and all that at the time, or were these all, I guess, up in the air? Like, when did these start to get nailed down?
One night during our bedtime story adventures that we would do, we got to telling this pretty wild tale, and the girls, they were old enough to really add to it and put their little marks in different places in the story. And it was such a fun story to tell that it would go on for quite some time into the evening at bedtime. And as little kids do, they just didn't want to go to bed. They wanted to keep on with the story. They wanted to keep hearing more. Tell us more. So we continued it the second night, and the same thing happened on into the third and finally the fourth night. And after the fourth night, around the fourth night, I suppose, it just got too big for me to remember all the minutia. So I decided to jot it all down, and eventually that became more or less the bones of what was eventually fleshed out to be the tale that I've been telling for the past few years.
This is something that I know some authors do. Did you write any people you know personally into the story?
Yes and no. Yes, as far as each character has bits and pieces of different personalities that I either find attractive in other people or a turn off in other people. Just it just kind of depends. So no one character really is representative of any one person, save for the personalities of the three characters that were based on my children that I gave the names of my children. Everybody else they're a bit of an amalgamation.
Now, this is one thing that I've been wondering since the beginning. Why are all kindred born on August 5th? Like, why does this date stand out to you or your family or people you know?
Oh, well, that is the birthday of the most important person in my life, and that's my wife.
That's actually a very good reason.
She thought so too.
That's cool. All right, so now I'm going to move on to a little bit more of like other parts of the universe. As I was reading, I started to notice that, say, like Maggie's totem was Elliot, and Lucy's was Maverick, and it got to the point where I realized, okay, the totems are always opposite their kindred's gender. Why is this? Why are they not, I guess, the same gender?
I guess the simplest way to put it, to actually put a vision to the explanation, is the image of the yin yang. To me, the interlocking symbols, and one being black and white, or whatever variation of the two colors have you. I don't know. It felt right to me. It felt like, I know that I am a complete person unto myself, but I wouldn't be wholly complete without my wife. And to me, that just made sense to me, to have a totem with the character that perhaps would have a different perspective on things than the kindred and or the totem, either one would, without that other half.
Now, this is just an imagination of mine. I was wondering, could you have what I'm going to call, this is just out of the blue, could you have mythical totems? Like, could you have like a dragon or a phoenix or something?
Every totem is predicated on the animals of Earth, but as you've read in the books, kindred are the guardians of the veil, and the veil extends beyond Earth. The academy is not even on Earth. So no, but, and I don't want to give anything away, but do you remember at the kind of the tail end of book 2 what was? That would be the best answer to that question.
Now, I noticed just one little small detail that was, I guess, very briefly said in book 2. Maggie's ambidextrous.
Yes.
Was this inspired by someone you know?
Well, it's kind of funny. One of my daughters, Liv, made the joke that she was ambidextrous because she couldn't write with either hand.
Oh.
And so that just made it just made me laugh, and I thought, well, then why not make this character ambidextrous, but actually be able to utilize weapon forms in either hand or simultaneously with both.
That's awesome. I always like to see like, how did that come about, and then sometimes the origins are hilarious. You know. I'm calling this one a theology question just because I don't know what else to call it. But
sure.
What is, I guess, your perspective on angels and demons? Because that appears to be a prevalent theme for the realm of the kindred. And did this influence the universe, and how?
Are you asking me, do I personally believe, or if I wrote this as allegory, or both?
Both.
I absolutely believe in angels and demons. Absolutely. And as far as the stories being allegorical, I wanted to write it in a fashion that if you were a person of faith, you can pick out pieces of the faith and you can say, okay, this makes sense to me. And I also wanted it to be vague in so much as if you were not a member of the faith, that it wouldn't prohibit you from enjoying the story. So there are pieces that are absolutely allegorical, but they help the story proceed in a fashion that speaks, at least in my opinion, to the heart of humanity.
Right, I like that. One other thing I was wondering is, you don't have to tell me like too many spoilery things or whatever, but are the wise ones meant to be like an allegory of the Trinity, or God and the angels, or the saints, or how does that work?
In my mind, in a way to help anchor it to the understanding of, again, people that are members of the faith, or even to people who aren't members of the faith, they can grasp the concept of, an all-powerful deity, whether they do or don't believe, and angels and the like. And so for me, the wise ones are absolutely the ultimate form of deity. And the totems are pieces and or parts of that. Now, in the story, they would actually be more along the lines of the angels, as it were, for the kindred. But as is listed in like the glossary, the few humans who have ever actually seen the kindred in their armor, or the way they move, and how hard it is to actually see them when they're in the middle of battle, because they are, for lack of a better term, superhuman. The humans would view the kindred themselves as angels throughout history. And in the same regard, the fallen as monsters, demons, devils, what have you.
And see, I really like the way how this can be, how it ties in a little bit to the human world. Like Artax the Conqueror is Alexander the Great. I loved that. That was cool.
Thank you.
Now these are just funny questions that I thought up just because why not? Now I'm going to try not to spoil too much for those that have not read both of these books, although you should go read the books. But whose idea of like you or your family or whatever was it for Thomas to lose the bet and have to wear the diaper and heels. That was probably my favorite funny part of the whole book.
Well, anytime I write a chapter, before I put my stamp on it to have it edited and everything, I always read it to my daughters beforehand. And I ask them, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Was the chapter too dry? Was the chapter, was it too mushy? Was there too much fighting going on? Was there not enough fighting going on? Was there too much dialogue? Was there too much description? So my girls really are, they're my muses, and they are my springboards. They're my inspirations. So anytime I finish a chapter, before I put my stamp on it, when I go to them, I want them to give me their feedback. And that was one of the things. They were like, well, it's a great chapter, Dad, but the prior chapter, it was probably a little bit on the less humorous side. And I always try to weigh and balance the humor and the heartache and the struggle and everything, because I don't want it to be too much on one side and too much on the other. I want it to be as even as possible. So sometimes as a palate cleanser, I try to incorporate little moments of humor and stuff like that. So that's actually, I got to give that madness to my girls.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was hilarious. Now, I've debated whether or not I asked this one, but there was the whole deal with Kindred usually vomit on their first portal shifting. And
right.
in Shadow of Arceus, there was no alluding to Maggie feeling sick at all. Is
right.
this because she's in Legacy? Just because she
100%.
Carries more magic? Okay.
Yep. She's inherently more powerful.
Before I ask this question, is Grimmel the Giggler a real thing, or is that just Mr. O'Sullivan just trying to scare the students?
Trying to keep everybody in line? Well, that's one of the things. A lot of what I write, I want to leave to the imagination of the reader. If the reader wants it to be real, it's real. If the reader says it's probably not real, then that's okay too. I have thought of maybe doing something extra with some of these side note characters that I've just introduced to move the story along. I'm actually working right now with a phenomenal artist, and her and I are working on putting together either a short series of comics for this tale, or putting together an entire graphic novel. I know that we're going to do at least a short series of comics based on the appointment of clans during the trials, to kind of showcase a little more visually what goes on during the course of it. She read that and was inspired to do a little bit extra with that. So a lot of the ancillary characters I have thought about adding and doing a few things with.
Because I was just wondering, like, okay, so that's Grimmel the Giggler. Maybe we could see an interaction one day. And I like what you're saying, though. It's kind of like you put it there, and then the fans can kind of decide whether they think it's real or not. Yeah.
A lot of what I write, I want it to be, some of it to be arbitrary and left to the reader's imagination, because when I read, I hate to have my hand held through the whole book. Let my imagination run wild sometimes, and so I try to give that to my readers as much as I can.
Right, and I like that. I think it was after I read through both books, and had 2 books worth of Lucy's attitude, so to speak. It made me wonder if she was like slightly inspired or completely inspired by Lucy in the Peanuts cartoons.
Well, she's probably, on a personal note, she's probably my favorite character to write, because she's such a misanthrope. A lot of her ways are inherent to me. So I don't know. In some way, maybe it's cathartic for me to write somebody that kind of has a chip on her shoulder sometimes. I'm sorry, I missed the second part of that question.
Oh, I was just kind of jokingly saying, is she inspired by Lucy from like the Charlie Brown cartoons?
Oh, well, No, but the name actually did come around. I guess in a way, the name come around. My stepdad, when I was a little boy, he'd pick at me sometimes. We play football, and sometimes he'd move the ball, and he'd pick at me and call me Lucy. Just carrying on having a good time. So I guess in a way, that maybe subconsciously I thought about that. I don't know, but yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for answering my questions, and I'm looking forward to the third book.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy you're looking forward to it. I'm extremely close right now. It's very, very close. I can tell you right now, I am writing the climax of the entire series as we speak.
Wow.
I am working on the climax, and I'm pulling out all the stops. It's exciting for me to read because I know what I enjoy reading, so I'm trying my best to throw everything plus the kitchen sink in there. I don't want to leave anybody disappointed.
Well, I'll tell you, if this is as good as the first two have been, and I have no doubt that it will be, I think this could be one of the best trilogies in modern fantasy.
Oh, thank you so much, Kellen. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for agreeing to do this interview with me.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank all of you for watching. See you next time.